What if a single denied boarding revealed the dark secrets of a billion-dollar company? In Flight of Shadows, Professor Elijah Carter, a man known for his integrity, finds himself caught in a web of bias and corruption when an advanced security system flags him unfairly. What begins as a frustrating encounter at the airport unravels into a battle against a corporation profiting from systemic discrimination. As Elijah digs deeper, he faces powerful enemies like Jonathan Beck, the CEO of SkyShield Technologies, and Alan Ross, the enforcer who stops at nothing to protect their empire. With allies like Linda, a brave airport worker, and Carter Lee, a former insider, Elijah must race against time to expose the truth before it's buried forever. Can one man's fight for justice bring down an entire system? Or will the cost of exposing the truth be too great? Don't miss this gripping story. Hit that subscribe button to stay updated. And before we jump in, let us know in the comments where in the world are you watching from? We'd love to hear from you. Elijah Carter adjusted his tie as he approached the boarding gate at LAX, his leather briefcase in hand. He'd just concluded a keynote speech on educational reform and was eager to return home to Atlanta. The gate agent scanned his ticket, then hesitated. A polite yet strained smile followed. "Sir, can you step aside for a moment?" the agent asked. Elijah frowned, but complied. "Is there an issue with my ticket?" The agent glanced nervously at the computer. "It's just a routine check. Please wait here." Routine. Elijah had heard that word too often, always paired with sidelong glances and awkward silences. He watched as other passengers, predominantly white, walked past without issue. Minutes turned into 15, then 20. Finally, a security officer approached. "Sir, I'm going to need you to come with me for a further screening." Elijah's frustration mounted. "What am I being screened for? I've already passed security." The officer's tone was clipped. "Please cooperate, sir." Elijah complied, though every fiber of his being screamed against the injustice. In a private room, they swabbed his belongings, questioned his travel plans, and finally informed him that he would not be allowed to board. "Your name flagged as security concern," the officer said flatly. "Flagged? Based on what?" Elijah demanded. "It's confidential," the officer replied. Elijah left the airport, his mind racing. Was this racial profiling? A mistake? Or something deeper? Later that night, as he scrolled through social media, a video caught his eye. A fellow passenger had recorded the incident. The clip showed Elijah's calm demeanor juxtaposed with the escalating demands of airport staff. It was already gaining traction online. Among the comments, one stood out. "This isn't new. The passenger watch list is rigged. Follow the money." Elijah's curiosity turned into determination. He wasn't just a victim. He would become the system's worst nightmare. But as he delved into the hidden biases of airport security protocols, he had no idea how deep the conspiracy ran or how many lives it had already ensnared. The online buzz from the viral video refused to die down. Overnight, Elijah Carter went from a respected professor to a symbol of systemic injustice. Strangers shared their own experiences of being singled out, many of them Black, Middle Eastern, or from other marginalized groups. But Elijah wasn't interested in fame. He wanted answers. By mid-morning, he returned to LAX, determined to confront the airline. He bypassed the main desk and went straight to the gate where his ordeal had begun. The same gate agent from the previous day, a woman in her early 30s, froze when she saw him. "Mr. Carter," she said hesitantly, her voice low. "I didn't think you'd come back." Elijah folded his arms. "I need to know why my name was flagged. I have every right to know." The agent's eyes darted nervously around the terminal. I don't have that information," she stammered. "Who does?" Elijah pressed. Before she could respond, a man in a sharp suit approached. His name tag read Alan Ross, supervisor. His smile was as tight as his handshake. "Mr. Carter, let me assure you that your situation is being reviewed. We'll be in touch soon. That's not good enough. Elijah replied. Alan's smile faltered. Sir, you're disrupting operations. If you continue, I'll have to ask security to escort you out. The tension thickened. The gate agent kept her head down, avoiding Elijah's gaze. As he turned to leave, something unusual happened. The agent slipped a small folded note into his hand, her fingers trembling. Elijah glanced at her. She didn't meet his eyes, but gave a barely perceptible nod. Once outside the terminal, he opened the note. The scrawled handwriting read, "Look up the passenger watch list. Search Jonathan Beck. He's the one pulling the strings." The name meant nothing to Elijah, but the word sent a jolt through him. If this was true, someone higher up was manipulating the system. He spent the afternoon at his office, piecing together what little he could. Public searches revealed Jonathan Beck as the CEO of SkyShield Technologies, the company contracted to manage airport security systems nationwide. Beck's glowing reputation painted him as a pioneer of AI-driven safety protocols. But there was something else, a small blip buried in a forum discussing airport security. One user claimed that SkyShield's AI wasn't as neutral as advertised. The post hinted that the system used outdated data sets, reinforcing biases rather than eliminating them. Elijah leaned back, the pieces slowly forming a troubling picture. He was no stranger to systemic racism, but this felt deliberate, calculated. As evening fell, a message notification pinged on his phone. It was from the same social media account that had commented on his video the night before. "Be careful. They're watching you now." His heartbeat quickened. Elijah realized this wasn't just a fight for his name. It was a fight to expose an invisible system of bias that controlled the lives of countless others. The gate agent's warning had opened a door he couldn't close. But as Elijah prepared to dig deeper, he knew one thing for sure: whoever Jonathan Beck was, he wasn't going to let his empire crumble without a fight. Elijah Carter sat at his desk, his office dimly lit except for the glow of his laptop screen. The name Jonathan Beck stared back at him from the search bar. Articles, press releases, and polished corporate videos painted Beck as a tech visionary. SkyShield Technologies was his crown jewel, an AI powerhouse trusted to safeguard airports across the country. But beneath the surface, Elijah sensed something darker. His fingers hovered over the keyboard as he typed. SkyShield bias controversy. Most search results praised the efficiency of SkyShield's AI systems, boasting reduced security risks and faster passenger processing times. But buried on the second page, Elijah found a thread on a whistleblower forum. The post was anonymous, dated months earlier. SkyShield's passenger watch list is flawed. It's profiling people based on race and ethnicity, using outdated data sets from old security programs. They're calling it optimization. What they're really doing is systemic discrimination. Elijah frowned, his mind racing. This was no coincidence. The watch list wasn't just flawed, it was weaponized. He bookmarked the thread and continued digging until another post caught his attention. SkyShield execs knew about this from the beginning. Check the meeting minutes from December 2021. Security overrides were discussed. Names to watch: Jonathan Beck and Alan Ross. Alan Ross, the smug supervisor from the airport. The connection hit Elijah like a jolt of electricity. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. It was a notification from his social media account. The anonymous user who had warned him before had sent another message. If you're serious about exposing Beck, you'll need access to the internal system. SkyShield isn't as secure as they think. Look for a backdoor through airport employee portals. But be careful, they'll notice if you dig too deep. Elijah's stomach churned. The message confirmed his worst fears. He wasn't just uncovering negligence, he was stepping into a battlefield. The next day, Elijah arrived at LAX under the guise of retrieving the luggage he'd left behind during the initial incident. As he navigated the bustling terminal, he scanned the faces of employees, searching for the gate agent who had slipped him the note. He found her near a kiosk, her posture tense. She looked up and immediately recognized him, her face pale. "Mr. Carter," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder. "Why are you here?" "I need your help," Elijah said, keeping his voice low. "You were right about Jonathan Beck and the watch list. But I need proof to expose it." Her eyes darted around nervously. "I shouldn't have given you that note. They're watching everything." "Linda," Elijah said gently, remembering her name from her name tag. "This isn't just about me. That system is ruining lives. If we don't stop it, who will?" She hesitated, then sighed. "There's a portal we use for employee updates. It's tied to SkyShield's database. If you can access it, you might find what you're looking for." "But you didn't hear that from me?" Before Elijah could thank her, a man in a black suit approached. His sharp eyes and earpiece marked him as security. "Linda, you're needed in the office," he said firmly, his gaze lingering on Elijah. She gave Elijah a fleeting look before walking away, her shoulders stiff with fear. Elijah wasted no time. Using the information Linda had provided, he returned home and accessed the employee portal. It was surprisingly easy, too easy. As he navigated the interface, he stumbled upon a folder labeled Passenger Audits, High-Risk Profiles. His heart pounded as he opened it. Names, photos, and flight histories filled the screen. Each profile was marked with vague descriptions like potential threat or unusual activity. The common thread? Nearly every passenger was a person of color. But as Elijah scrolled, the screen suddenly froze. A red warning message flashed. Unauthorized access detected. His phone buzzed immediately. It was another message from the anonymous user. "They know. Shut it down and leave now." Elijah slammed his laptop shut, his chest tight with panic. He had found the proof, but he had also just made himself a target. Elijah Carter's hands trembled as he stared at his laptop, now closed but still emitting an air of danger. His breathing was heavy, his mind replaying the ominous message. "They know. Shut it down and leave now." Who were they? How much danger was he in? His phone buzzed again, breaking the silence. Another message from the anonymous user. "Meet me tonight. Warehouse 12 near the docks. Come alone. Destroy your devices." After reading this, Elijah stared at the text, his heart racing. The docks? What kind of clandestine operation had he stumbled into? Destroying his devices felt extreme, but the stakes were rising fast. After scribbling down the meeting details, Elijah took a hammer to his phone and laptop. Every swing sent shards of plastic and glass scattering across his desk. His anger fueled his determination. By nightfall, Elijah arrived at the docks. The air smelled of salt water and diesel, and the faint hum of machinery echoed in the distance. Warehouse 12 loomed ahead, its rusted metal doors barely hanging on their hinges. Inside, a single hanging light bulb illuminated a small table surrounded by shadows. A figure emerged, their face obscured by a hoodie. "You're the professor," the figure said, their voice low and gravelly. "And you're the one who's been warning me," Elijah replied, his tone cautious. The figure pulled back the hood, revealing a middle-aged man with graying hair and sharp, wary eyes. "My name's Carter Lee," he said. "I used to work for SkyShield. I was part of the team that built the passenger watch list." Elijah's chest tightened. "Then you're part of the problem." Carter held up a hand. "I know how it sounds, but I didn't realize what they were doing until it was too late. Beck sold us on the idea that AI would make airports safer. No biases, just data. But the data we used was already biased profiles from post 9/11 security measures. It was never neutral." Elijah crossed his arms. "You're telling me this system is targeting people like me because of decisions made decades ago?" Carter nodded. "It's worse than that. Beck knew. He saw the reports. Instead of fixing the problem, he exploited it. The system flags more people of color as high risk, which justifies tighter security contracts and bigger budgets for SkyShield. It's profitable. Elijah's anger simmered beneath his calm exterior. If you knew all this, why didn't you come forward? Carter's gaze dropped. I tried. They buried me, smeared my name, blacklisted me in tech. I lost everything. Elijah leaned forward. So why help me now? Because you're not just a professor, Carter said. You're a symbol now. That video of you at the airport is proof of what's happening. But Beck's going to bury it, just like he buried me, unless we take him down. Carter slid a flash drive across the table. This has everything you need. Meeting notes, email chains, payment records. But if you use it, they'll come for you too. Elijah pocketed the drive. What's your angle in all this? Carter's face hardened. I just want to see Beck fall. That man ruined my life, and it's time he paid for it. As Elijah turned to leave, Carter added, one more thing. Alan Ross is Beck's enforcer. He's already watching you. Be ready for anything. Elijah nodded, stepping back into the cold night air. His resolve hardened. He now had the evidence to expose SkyShield, but he also knew Carter's warning was real. When Elijah returned home, his front door was ajar. His stomach dropped. Slowly pushing it open, he found his apartment ransacked, drawers overturned, papers scattered, and his destroyed laptop missing. A single piece of paper sat on his desk. In bold, typed letters it read, "Back off, Professor." Elijah stood in the chaos of his ransacked apartment, the warning note clutched in his hand. The words "back off, Professor" felt more like a dare than a threat. He wasn't the type to back down, but the sheer brazenness of the intrusion sent a chill down his spine. Who had been in his home? Was it Ross? Or someone worse? He carefully checked each room to ensure he was alone, then locked every door and window. His thoughts turned to the flash drive Carter Lee had given him. If it contained the proof he needed to expose Jonathan Beck and SkyShield, it was only a matter of time before they came after him with more than just warnings. Elijah retrieved an old laptop from a storage box, one he hadn't used in years, and powered it up. He connected the flash drive, half expecting some kind of malware trap. Instead, a folder labeled SkyShield Internal appeared on the screen. He opened the first file, a spreadsheet listing hundreds of flagged passengers. Each entry included race, age, and vague labels like unusual patterns or enhanced screening required. Nearly all the flagged names were people of color. The next file was an email chain between Jonathan Beck and Alan Ross. Elijah's eyes narrowed as he read the exchanges. Increase high-risk profile outputs to align with Q3 security contract renewals. Passenger watch list is operating at expected efficiency. Public complaints are within acceptable thresholds. It was a smoking gun. The watch list wasn't about safety, it was about manipulating data to justify bigger contracts. As Elijah continued reading, his phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. A calm but cold voice greeted him. Good evening, Professor Carter. I trust you've had time to review your situation. Who is this? Elijah demanded, his voice sharp. The voice chuckled softly. Let's just say I work with people who take security very seriously. And we know you have something that doesn't belong to you. Elijah's grip on the phone tightened. You mean the truth? The voice hardened. You're making a mistake. Walk away now, and this all ends quietly. Push forward, and you won't like the consequences. Before Elijah could respond, the line went dead. His heart raced. He was no stranger to academic debates or heated exchanges, but this was something far darker. Whoever was behind this had resources and reach, and they wanted him silenced. Determined to keep moving, Elijah copied the flash drive's contents to a secure cloud server. He couldn't risk losing the evidence if something happened to him. The next morning, Elijah headed to a public library to continue his work in a safer environment. He was combing through more documents when his eyes landed on a meeting transcript from December 2021. It confirmed what Carter had hinted at. Beck had been warned about the AI's racial bias, but dismissed it as statistically insignificant. Elijah's frustration boiled over. This wasn't ignorance. It was intentional exploitation. Suddenly, his phone buzzed again, this time a message. It was from Linda, the gate agent who had slipped him the note. "They're coming for me. I need help." Elijah's pulse quickened. Linda had already put herself at risk to help him, and now she was in danger. He messaged her back immediately. "Where are you?" The reply came almost instantly. "Airport parking garage, level 3. Hurry." Elijah bolted from the library, his thoughts a whirlwind of urgency and fear. When he arrived at the parking garage, he found Linda pacing near a row of cars, her face pale and tear-streaked. "Linda," he called. "Out." Running toward her. She turned, relief flooding her expression. But before she could speak, a black SUV screeched around the corner, its tires squealing. "Get down," Elijah shouted, grabbing Linda and pulling her behind a nearby car as the SUV roared past. The vehicle didn't stop, but the message was clear. They were being watched. Linda clutched his arm, her voice trembling. "I thought I was helping, but I've made everything worse." "You did the right thing," Elijah said firmly. "But now we need to stay one step ahead." He guided her to his car and drove away from the airport, both of them scanning their surroundings for any sign of pursuit. Elijah knew the walls were closing in, but he also knew one thing for certain: he couldn't stop now. The car ride was tense. Elijah gripped the wheel, glancing in the rearview mirror every few seconds. Beside him, Linda sat in silence, her arms folded tightly across her chest. The SUV had disappeared, but the unease lingered. "We're being followed, aren't we?" Linda finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not right now," Elijah replied. "But that doesn't mean we're safe." Linda let out a shaky breath. "I didn't think it would get this bad. I just wanted to do the right thing." "You did," Elijah assured her. "But now we're in this together, and they're not going to let us off the hook easily." He pulled into the parking lot of a small diner off the interstate. The lot was nearly empty, making it easier to spot anyone who might be tailing them. Inside, they took a booth in the far corner away from the windows. Elijah placed his phone on the table and leaned in. "Tell me everything you know about Sky Shield and Jonathan Beck." Linda hesitated, her fingers nervously tracing patterns on the table. "I don't know much about Beck himself. But the watch list. I've seen the profiles. I always thought it was random, but..." "It's not." Elijah nodded. "It's not. The data's rigged to flag people based on outdated bias patterns. Beck knows, and he's profiting from it." Linda's eyes widened. "That explains why they've been so secretive. The training manuals, the random updates to the system, they're always vague. And Alan Ross, he's been watching the gate agents closely, especially me, ever since I passed you that note." Elijah tensed at the mention of Ross. "He's Beck's enforcer. If he's watching you, it means Beck knows you're helping me." Linda shivered. "I just wanted to stop seeing people like you, like us, being treated like criminals for no reason." Elijah's mind raced. They needed a way to expose Sky Shield before Beck and Ross could silence them. The flash drive had the evidence, but it wasn't enough. They needed more, something undeniable, something public. As they discussed their next move, Elijah's phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. He hesitated before answering. "Hello." "Professor Carter," a familiar voice greeted him. It was Alan Ross. "I understand you've been busy." Elijah's stomach sank. "What do you want, Ross?" "I want you to know how this ends," Ross said coolly. "You and your little friend can run all you want, but you won't win. Sky Shield isn't just a company, it's a network. And we've already erased your little files from the cloud." Elijah's blood ran cold. "You're bluffing." "You'll find out soon enough," Ross said, his tone smug. "But let me make it simple for you. Walk away, or we'll make sure no one ever hears from you again." The line went dead. Elijah's hands clenched the phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. They know everything. They've been monitoring us this whole time. Linda's face paled. What do we do now? Elijah's mind raced. If SkyShield had wiped the cloud server, the flash drive might be their only remaining evidence. And if Ross was this bold, it meant they were running out of time. We go after Ross, Elijah said firmly. He's the link to Beck, and he knows too much. If we can catch him in the act or get him to slip up, we might stand a chance. Linda stared at him, fear and determination battling in her expression. You're saying we bait him? That's dangerous, Elijah. I know, Elijah admitted. But it's the only way. We have to take the fight to them before they destroy everything. As they left the diner, Elijah couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were closing in. Every step forward felt like wading deeper into a trap, but retreat wasn't an option. They had come too far to turn back now. Elijah's plan to confront Alan Ross took shape as he and Linda drove away from the diner. The night stretched out like a silent predator, its shadows growing heavier with each passing mile. They couldn't afford to make a single misstep. We need Ross to expose himself, Elijah said, gripping the wheel tightly. If we can force him to slip up, we'll have something undeniable to take to the media or even law enforcement. Linda, seated beside him, looked uneasy. And how exactly are we going to do that? He's not the type to lose his cool. Elijah glanced at her. No, but he's arrogant. Men like Ross think they're untouchable. We just need the right bait to make him reckless. They pulled into a motel parking lot, choosing a room on the far end to avoid drawing attention. Inside, Elijah spread out the flash drive's contents on his old laptop, analyzing every document and email for clues. What about this? Linda asked, pointing to an encrypted file labeled High-Risk Protocol Amendments, Internal Use Only. Elijah frowned. That looks important, but I don't have the tools to crack it. We need someone with experience in cybersecurity. Linda hesitated. I know someone who can help. The next morning, they met with Linda's contact, a scruffy, hoodie-clad man named Darren who operated out of a dingy tech repair shop. Darren was nervous at first, but agreed to help when he saw the file's contents. This is risky, Darren muttered as he worked on decrypting the file. If they trace this back to me, they won't, Elijah assured him, though his own confidence wavered. After an hour, Darren leaned back, wiping sweat from his forehead. Got it. Elijah leaned over to examine the decrypted file. His heart skipped a beat as he read the details. Amendments were made to flag specific ethnic groups as high risk, under the guise of reducing potential threats. Ross's name appeared in the approval logs, alongside directives from Jonathan Beck himself. An upcoming meeting was scheduled at a private location to discuss reinforcing security strategies. This is it, Elijah whispered. This meeting is our chance to catch Ross red-handed. Linda's eyes widened. You're not seriously thinking about going there, are you? We have to, Elijah replied. If we can record what's said, it'll be the final nail in their coffin. That evening, Elijah and Linda staked out the location, a sleek, nondescript office building in an industrial part of the city. The area was eerily quiet, and the glowing windows on the top floor suggested activity. You stay here, Elijah instructed, handing Linda a burner phone. If something goes wrong, call the press. Send them the flash drive. Linda grabbed his arm. Elijah, this is insane. You can't walk into their meeting like this. He met her gaze, his resolve firm. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about everyone who's been targeted by their system. If we don't stop them, no one will. Taking a deep breath, Elijah exited the car and approached the building. Inside, Alan Ross stood at the head of a sleek conference table, surrounded by a handful of men in suits. Their conversation buzzed with self-assured tones. Compliance rates are holding steady, one man said, pointing to a chart. Ross smirked. Good. The fewer questions we get, the longer this system stays profitable. Elijah, hiding behind a partition near the entrance, hit record on his phone. Another man spoke up. What about the professor? Carter. Ross's smirk turned cold. We're handling him. If he keeps digging, we'll make him disappear. Elijah's stomach churned, but he stayed silent, carefully angling his phone to capture the room. Ross continued. This is about control. The watch list isn't just a security tool, it's leverage. Airports, government contracts, even private investors, they all depend on our system. Carter doesn't understand who he's up against. Suddenly, a voice behind Elijah broke the silence. Well, looks like we have a guest. Elijah spun around to find two security guards flanking him. One grabbed his arm, yanking him into the room. Ross's smirk widened as he saw Elijah. Professor Carter, I was wondering when you'd show up. Elijah kept his phone hidden, the recording still running. I've seen what you've done, Ross. The profiling, the contracts, it's all here. Ross stepped closer, his voice low and venomous. You think you can stop this? You're just one man. We control the narrative, the data, everything. No one will believe you. Elijah's pulse raced, but he forced himself to remain calm. You're wrong. People are already watching, and they'll believe the truth. Ross's smirk faltered slightly, but he quickly recovered. Get him out of here, he ordered the guards. As they dragged Elijah toward the door, Ross added, make sure he doesn't leave a trace. Elijah struggled against the guards as they dragged him down a dimly lit hallway. His heart pounded in his chest, but his mind raced faster. The phone in his pocket was still recording his only chance to expose everything. You don't have to do this, Elijah said, his voice steady despite his fear. Do you even know what Ross is hiding? The guard on his left grunted. Not our problem, Professor. Stay quiet. The hallway ended at an unmarked door. One of the guards pulled out a key card, swiping it across the lock. The door opened to reveal a dark storage room filled with unused furniture and file boxes. Sit tight, the guard ordered, shoving Elijah inside. The door slammed shut, and Elijah heard the unmistakable sound of the lock clicking into place. In the silence, Elijah assessed his surroundings. The storage room had no windows and only a faint glow from a malfunctioning ceiling light. His phone was still in his pocket, the recording uninterrupted. He crouched down and whispered into the device, detailing everything he'd witnessed in the meeting room. Jonathan Beck and Alan Ross are profiting off a system designed to profile minorities. I have them on record admitting it. If you're hearing this, I need you to expose it. He paused, knowing this might be his only shot. Linda, if you get this, send it to every news outlet. Don't let them silence us. Elijah tucked the phone into his sock, ensuring it was hidden if the guards returned. Now, he had to find a way out. Back in the car, Linda waited anxiously. Her hands fidgeted on the burner phone as she repeatedly checked the time. Elijah had been inside for too long. A loud vibration startled her. A message flashed on the phone's screen. It was from Elijah. If I don't make it out, use this recording. Her chest tightened as she listened to the audio. Ross's smug voice filled the car, detailing the watch list's true purpose and the company's ruthless tactics. It was all there, clear and undeniable. Linda's fear gave way to resolve. She opened her laptop and began uploading the file to a cloud server, attaching it to emails addressed to several major news outlets. But as the upload began, headlights flooded the parking lot. Linda looked up to see a black SUV pulling in. Inside the storage room, Elijah's search for an escape route was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. The lock clicked, and the door creaked open. Ross entered, flanked by the two guards. His smirk was gone, replaced with a look of cold determination. You really don't know when to quit, do you? Ross said, his tone dripping with disdain. Elijah straightened. I'm not the one afraid of the truth, Ross. That's why you locked me in here instead of answering for what you've done. Ross's eyes narrowed. The truth doesn't matter if no one hears it. You're alone, Carter. No one's coming to save you. Elijah's mind raced. Ross didn't know about the recording or Linda's role. He had to buy time. Alone? Elijah said, feigning confidence. You really think no one else is watching? You underestimate how many people care about justice. Ross chuckled darkly. Your little crusade ends tonight. No one's going to care about a disgraced professor caught trespassing. The guard stepped forward, but before they could grab Elijah, a loud crash echoed down the hallway. What was that? One of the guards barked. Ross froze, his confident demeanor cracking for the first time. Check it out, he ordered the guards. As they left, Elijah seized the opportunity. You think you're in control, but you're wrong. That system of yours, it's already collapsing. People are waking up to the lies you've built it on. Ross stepped closer, his face inches from Elijah's. You're playing with fire, Carter, and you'll burn. Before Ross could say more, one of the guards burst back into the room, panic in his voice. We've got a problem. Someone's in the parking lot, they're uploading something. Elijah's heart leaped. Linda. Ross turned on his heel, fury etched into his expression. Shut it down. Now. Linda watched as the SUV sped toward her. She knew she didn't have much time. The upload was at 87%. Grabbing the burner phone, she slipped out of the car and crouched behind a nearby dumpster. The SUV skidded to a halt, and two men jumped out, scanning the area. Linda's pulse raced as she crouched lower. She couldn't let them find her or the laptop. The upload dinged at 100% just as one of the men spotted the laptop sitting on the car seat. He grabbed it, yanking the cord free, but the damage was done. The file was out. In the world. Linda darted toward the exit, her footsteps muffled by the hum of nearby machinery. She didn't stop until she reached the street, disappearing into the night. In the storage room, Ross's phone buzzed. He answered with a snarl. It's too late, one of his men said. The file's been uploaded. Ross's face darkened as he stared at Elijah. You just signed your death warrant. But Elijah smiled for the first time. No, Ross. You just signed yours. Jonathan Beck's penthouse office overlooked the shimmering city skyline. But tonight, the view offered no comfort. His phone buzzed incessantly, the notifications growing more urgent. Beck answered a call, his voice cold and sharp. What's the damage? Alan Ross, still fuming from the events at the meeting, replied from the other end. The file's out. News outlets are running with it. Blogs, forums, hell, even mainstream media are picking it up. Beck's jaw tightened. And Carter? He's still in our custody, but Linda slipped through. We're tracking her, Ross muttered. Fix this, Ross, Beck growled. Discredit the evidence. Call it a fabrication. You know the playbook. Ross hesitated. This isn't like before. The file has timestamps, metadata, even your name on some of the approvals. They're tying it all back to you and Sky Shield. Beck leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. Then we need to shift the narrative. Make Carter the villain. He's just one man, turn him into a scapegoat. Meanwhile, Elijah sat in the storage room, his wrists now bound with zip ties. The guards had returned, their demeanor tenser than before. He could hear the buzz of their radios, snippets of frantic communication confirming what he suspected. Linda had succeeded. Ross stormed in, his expression livid. You've made quite the mess, Professor. Do you think you've won? Elijah met his gaze evenly. The truth is out. People are watching now. Your lies won't hold. Ross grabbed a chair and sat across from him, his tone dangerously calm. The truth is subjective. By the time we're done, you'll be the story a disgruntled academic fabricating claims because his career was failing. No one will believe you. Elijah smirked. That might have worked yesterday, but not anymore. Your voice isn't the only one people are listening to. Ross leaned in, his eyes narrowing. You're gambling with your life, Carter. Elijah didn't flinch. And you're losing yours. Ross's radio crackled. A voice on the other end announced, protesters are gathering outside Sky Shield HQ. They're calling for Beck's resignation. Ross's expression darkened. He turned to the guards. Watch him. I'll deal with this. Across town, Linda blended into a growing crowd outside Sky Shield headquarters. People held signs reading "End Racial Profiling" and "Justice for all passengers." News vans lined the street, reporters eagerly covering the unfolding scandal. Linda's heart pounded as she spotted Carter Lee in the crowd. She approached him, her voice low. "Did the media bite?" Carter nodded. "They're all over it. We even got a few lawmakers calling for an investigation. But it's not over. Beck's going to fight back." Linda glanced toward the building's towering facade. "Then we need to keep the pressure on. This isn't just about Elijah, it's about everyone they've targeted." Inside Sky Shield's HQ, Beck addressed his PR team. His tone was calm, but his words carried venom. "We need a counterattack. Leak Carter's financial records, find anything that paints him as unstable or corrupt, and spin the AI system as a misunderstood tool that saved lives." One of his advisors hesitated. "Sir, the metadata in the files, it's airtight. We can't erase your involvement." Beck's eyes narrowed. "Then we make people doubt it. Flood the media with noise, alternative explanations, fabricated scandals. The public doesn't need the truth, they just need confusion." As night fell, Linda received a text on the burner phone. It was from an unknown number. "Elijah is being held in the storage area of the building where you met Ross. There's a security flaw at the loading dock. Use it." Her heart raced. "They've got Elijah. We need to get him out." Carter frowned. "Are you sure this isn't a trap?" "I don't have a choice," Linda said firmly. "I owe him." Elijah, still bound in the storage room, tried to stay calm. His mind replayed Ross's threats, but his determination only grew. If the protests outside were any indication, people weren't buying Sky Shield's lies. The door creaked open again, but this time it wasn't Ross. Linda slipped inside, her face tense but focused. "We need to move. Now." Elijah's eyes widened. "How did you find me?" "A contact tipped me off." "No time to explain. Let's go." She cut his zip ties with a pocket knife, and they crept out of the room. The hallways were mostly empty, but distant voices and footsteps kept them on edge. As they reached the loading dock, a guard spotted them. "Hey, stop." Linda grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and sprayed it in the guard's face, buying them enough time to escape through the dock's side entrance. Outside, Elijah and Linda melted into the crowd of protesters. Cameras flashed as reporters recognized Elijah, rushing to him with microphones. "What do you have to say about the allegations against Sky Shield?" one asked. Elijah's voice was steady but filled with conviction. "Sky Shield has been profiting off a system designed to target marginalized communities. The evidence is out there now, and it's time for accountability." The morning after Elijah's public statement, the world seemed to hold its breath. News channels ran continuous coverage of the Sky Shield scandal. Headlines blared. "A professor exposes racial profiling in Sky Shield AI systems." Protests mount as Sky Shield faces calls for accountability. CEO Jonathan Beck under fire. Resignation demanded. Elijah watched the coverage from Linda's apartment, where they had sought refuge after the chaotic night. His phone buzzed constantly with calls from journalists, civil rights organizations, and even government officials. Linda handed him a cup of coffee, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and pride. "You did it, Elijah. The truth is out." He took a sip, his hands still shaking from the adrenaline. "We've shaken them, but it's not over." Beck's not the type to back down quietly. As if on cue, the television screen switched to a live press conference. Jonathan Beck stood behind a podium, his expression calm and controlled, flanked by his legal team. "Sky Shield Technologies has always been committed to the safety of our passengers," Beck began, his voice smooth. Recent accusations against our systems and practices are baseless and stem from a coordinated effort to undermine our success. Elijah's jaw tightened as Beck continued. Professor Carter's claims are not only misleading but dangerous. His accusations are built on misinterpreted data, and we will be pursuing legal action for defamation. Linda turned to Elijah, her face pale. He's painting you as the villain. Elijah nodded grimly. That's his play to discredit me before the full investigation begins. He knows if he can confuse the public, he might survive this. That afternoon, Elijah and Linda met with Carter Lee and representatives from a civil rights organization. They strategized their next move in a cramped conference room. The evidence is strong, Carter Lee said, gesturing to the files. But Beck's team is already working to muddy the waters. We need a public way to force their hand. Elijah frowned. What about the AI system itself? If we can prove it's still operating with bias, it would undermine everything Beck is saying. A representative from the organization, a sharp-eyed woman named Valerie, nodded. SkyShield system is active in hundreds of airports. If we can document it flagging passengers unfairly, it could be the final blow. Elijah leaned forward. Then we test it. Publicly. The next day, Elijah, Linda, and a small team traveled to LAX. Under the guise of regular passengers, they coordinated with several individuals of different ethnic backgrounds, each equipped with hidden cameras and microphones. As they approached the security gates, Linda whispered, "This has to work. If we can show the system's bias in real time, there's no way Beck can deny it." Elijah nodded, his heart pounding. "Let's do this." The group passed through security one by one. Predictably, the AI system flagged individuals of color, including Elijah, for secondary screening, while white passengers walked through unimpeded. The hidden cameras captured everything. The inconsistent criteria, the tense interactions, and the unspoken discomfort of the security staff following orders. One guard, frustrated, muttered under his breath, "We just do what the system tells us. It's not like we can override it." Elijah knew that statement alone would be damning. By evening, the footage was compiled into a powerful video and released to media outlets. The clips were interwoven with Elijah's commentary, breaking down the data and exposing the system's inherent bias. The video went viral within hours, sparking outrage across the country. Social media erupted with hashtags like SkyShield Scandal and Justice for Passengers. Prominent figures in politics and entertainment spoke out, demanding SkyShield's immediate accountability. The next morning, Jonathan Beck resigned in a hastily arranged press conference. His lawyer read a prepared statement. Mr. Beck has chosen to step down to ensure that SkyShield can focus on rebuilding trust with the public. He denies any wrongdoing, but acknowledges the need for a thorough investigation. Alan Ross, however, wasn't as lucky. Federal agents raided his office, uncovering additional documents that implicated him in falsifying reports to cover up the AI system's flaws. In the weeks that followed, the passenger watch list was dismantled, and SkyShield's contracts were suspended pending further review. Elijah was invited to testify before Congress about his findings, his calm but powerful testimony galvanizing lawmakers to push for stricter regulations on AI and security. Linda returned to her job at the airport, but in a new role as part of a passenger advocacy team, ensuring no one else would endure what Elijah had. One evening, Elijah stood outside LAX Terminal 4, the same place where his journey had begun. The air was crisp, carrying the hum of bustling travelers and departing planes. Carter Lee joined him, handing over a printed newspaper. The front page headline read, "Whistleblowers spark reform in aviation security." "You did it," Carter said, his tone filled with admiration. Elijah shook his head. "We did it. This was never about me, it's about everyone who's been targeted, silenced, and ignored." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Elijah felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The battle had been long and grueling, but justice had prevailed. As Professor Elijah Carter's journey reveals, fighting for justice often means standing up against systems designed to silence and oppress. His courage, along with the allies who refused to back down, turned a personal struggle into a movement for lasting change. This story reminds us that the fight for equality is ongoing, but together we can challenge bias, expose injustice, and create a fairer world. If this story inspired you or made you think differently, don't forget to like, share, and comment with your thoughts below. For more stories like this filled with powerful truths, gripping twists, and meaningful messages, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Together, let's keep the conversation alive and work toward a brighter, more just future. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.